We'll now reconvene as the Wicomico County Council for Legislative 2018-08, May 1st, 2018. The next item on the agenda is Mrs. Hurley. I'll leave this up to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next item for business on the agenda is Resolution Number 43, 2018. This is confirming the appointment of Sally J. Smith to the Commission on Aging. At the last council meeting, council approved several appointments to the Commission on Aging, but for the public's benefit, the Commission on Aging assists the elderly in Wicomico County with health, social, economic, recreation, and environmental problems.
Entertain a motion from council to approve Resolution 43, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Resolution passes.
Okay, next is Resolution Number 44, 2018, confirming the appointment of Michele M. Garigliano to the Lower Shore Workforce Investment Board. This board is responsible for overseeing the Workforce Investment Act, funds and programs in the local community.
Entertain a motion to approve Resolution 44-2018.
So moved.
Second. Second.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Resolution passes.
Okay, the next item for consideration is Resolution Number 45, 2018, authorizing the county executive to accept a grant award from the Administrative Office of the Courts, Office of Security Administration, in the amount of $18,133. The grant funds are to be used for security enhancements at Circuit Court, and we have the Circuit Court Administrator, Melissa Beatty, here if there are any questions.
Entertain a motion to approve Resolution 45, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Melissa Beatty, Circuit Court Administrator, Circuit Court for Wicomico County. Thank you for having me this evening. The funds that have been granted to the Circuit Court and to the county are to replace our aging magnetometers in the Circuit Court. The magnetometers typically have a good service life of 10 years. Ours are at 12 and 15 years at this point. So the Administrative Office of the Courts has granted funds to allow us to replace those to continue to secure the facility.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? I'm going to make this real easy. All those in favor of Resolution 45, 2018, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Resolution passes.
Thank you,
very
gentlemen.
much.
Okay, next, we have Resolution Number 46, 2018, to authorize the county executive to acquire 9.02 acres of land, more or less, located in the Westwood Commerce Park, identified as Lot D1, bounded on the north by Naylor Mill Road and on the south by International Drive, as a proposed site for the new Sheriff's Office building. Council did have a work session on this at its last council meeting.
Okay. Entertain a motion to approve Resolution 46, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Excuse me? Who would we be addressing this with? Weston, would it be you? Come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I apologize, last council meeting I was out with a chest cold, so I've generally been caught up, but we're requesting to acquire a parcel in the Westwood Commerce Park, a little over 9 acres, very little over 9 acres. We think it's strategically located, has water and sewer availability. It's located in the corporate limits of the city of Salisbury. Stormwater-wise, that development had a regional system of stormwater ponds put in. Regulations have since changed in that time. However, we can still utilize the regional pond for quantity and for a part of the quality requirements of the new stormwater regulations. So we'll still have to do some things on site, but you're not talking major ponds. So we should be good there. It's basically ready to build for the most part.
How much are we going to lose by having to do more stormwater management on this 9 acres?
Well, technically, we would be, in terms of space,
Yes.
or we'd be looking at, if you're familiar with the, more in line with the parking lot across Glen Avenue from the Civic Center. Like if you're accessing the Flanders Room, that between parking locations, instead of having raised curbs and kind of unused areas, the current practice is to go low, have it drain to that spot. So what they call bioretentions will be the typical process. So it's mainly just to meet, and we haven't done the calculations yet, but it will be to primarily treat the parking lot and roof area. But again, we won't need a pond because there's massive regional ponds already out there.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Yes, Joe. Go ahead, Warren. Sure.
I know we had a little snafu back when they first brought the design to us for the Sheriff's Department and the 911 Center. So what exactly is the plan now? Are we going to just design a Sheriff's Department and build that for the time being, or are we going to do both, or?
So what we've done, it's still being modified, but we met with both the sheriff's office as well as emergency services, and namely emergency services, where that seemed to be one of the questions, to see, all right, what is the actual space you need here and now? I know when the architects, and as it was presented, was they were asking, what do you need long-term? I think the beauty of the building that has been presented, and when you see the final form, is that it's expandable. So as the sheriff office, if a certain division grows, they'll be able to knock out a wall and build out a certain direction. Same with emergency services. It's meant to be, I don't want to hit that microphone. It's meant to be expanded at a future date. So I haven't been in the latest conversations with the architect and the sheriff's office and emergency services, but I do know emergency services definitely changed their footprint from the original image you saw, which I think had 20,000 square feet for them. They don't need nearly that amount. What you saw last time, my understanding, had more of a EOC room, not housing all of emergency services. So that's still being worked on, but I think the sheriff's office, for the most part, is in good shape. There may be a tweak or two. And again, it's the building is meant to be feasible. So if down the road something needs expanding, it shouldn't be difficult to do that. I think it's more just what are the security concerns, and I know they have different zones in terms of access points, what a civilian can get to versus the sheriff himself. There's degrees.
Thank you.
The budget, this is for the acquisition of land,
Correct.
and then at a later date, we're going to see approval of the sheriff's office 911 center. So
Yes.
there will be a way for us to, this is not, we're not approving the building right now, we're just approving the buying of the land.
Yeah, this is purely the property, which we feel is large enough and ideal enough to place whatever that final building will look like. When the building's been finalized, we then also have to lay out the site itself. So how does it drain? Where's the parking? Where's the fence going? Also keeping in mind, if you do build out on any portion, how does that affect things? So it'll be hopefully strategically located in that as future demands are present. Down the road, we'll be able to expand it intelligently and minimal impact.
Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 46, 2018, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried, resolution passes.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Wes.
Okay, the next item for consideration is Resolution Number 47, 2018, to engage special legal counsel. The county executive is recommending hiring special legal counsel experienced in prosecuting fraudulent marketing claims or other consumer protection claims against pharmaceutical manufacturers and distributors for their role in the opioid epidemic. You'll notice that there are two contracts in the brief book. One is the original proposed contract, and then there's one identified as Exhibit A attached to the resolution. If council desires to move forward with the resolution with the Exhibit A contract attached, the names of the additional law firms will need to be added to that resolution.
Thank you. I entertain a motion to approve Resolution 47-2018.
So moved.
Second.
Good evening.
Excuse
Good
me.
evening, Paul.
Oh, sorry, Paul. I need a second.
Oh, sorry.
Do we have a second? There's no second. Resolution 47-2018 does not pass. Thank you, Mrs. Hurley.
Mr.
Thank you,
President,
Paul.
that's all I have.
At this time, we open the floor for public comments in general. If you'd like to make any public comments, come to the podium, please. State your name and your county of residence and your concerns. Delegate Carl Anderson, do you have comments?
No, it's called
Thanks for being here. Thank you. We have State's Attorney Jamie Dykes here as well. Thank you.
she said she wants to speak about
That concludes public comments. Council comments. Nope. And the presidential comments, I'd just like to say I was glad to see that the number of people who came out tonight. I always like it when we get a lot of people for public hearings. To me, it helps us. I do. To me, it sort of helps us get a pulse as to what's happening in the community, and I do appreciate that. And it was a broad outreach of people, I think, who came to support quite a few different causes. We saw the volunteer fire department came in here from Salisbury, corrections. I think there were some discussions about Warwick, and of course there was discussions about the library and the Wicomico County Board of Education. This council, I think, will take all these into consideration very seriously. We're very open-minded, as I think this community knows that, and a very pragmatic council. I don't think there's any hidden agendas here. So I'm anxious to get started with it and see what the council is going to want to do with this budget. We are pro-education, we're pro-business, and we, of course, have always been pro-community. So that being said, one clarification, it had been mentioned several times about, whether or not we could raise taxes, and from my understanding, that I don't see that as an alternative for this county. Our primary two sources of revenue is the income tax receipts and the property taxes. Right now, as I understand, the income tax receipts, we are at the absolute maximum allowed by the state of Maryland. So we could not raise the income taxes as had been suggested tonight. The only other real source that we have would be property taxes. And the property taxes, the increase in the property taxes have already been increased to what is allowed by charter. So we're limited there. Primarily what the council's going to have to look towards if we are concerned about any of these projects, we would have to know where to cut from somewhere else. So you have to keep that in mind. One thing will have to come in order to resolve the other. But I think we do take this seriously. We recognize that. We've done this before. We did it last year. And we'll do that once we have a chance to convene and to discuss it in multiple work sessions over the last 4 to 5 weeks. That being said, I would like to, I have to read it. Yeah. Entertain a motion to adjourn from the legislative session to go into open work sessions followed by a closed work session pursuant to local government article section 3-305B3 to consider the acquisition of real property for a public purpose to protect the county's bargaining power. That was a motion. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I didn't finish. It's not absolutely complete, though, because I do think we have to note that we're adjourning to go into an Urban Services Commission followed by a closed work session. Is that not correct?
You can do that. The adjournment would actually be after the open work sessions for
We
that.
got 2 open work sessions,
All right.
3 open work sessions.
Okay. I have a motion and a second, correct?
Yes.
So we are going to adjourn and so that we can reconvene as the Urban Services Commission. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Meeting's adjourned. We're now convened as the Urban Services Commission. First item on the open work session agenda is the Village Downriver Condominium Association.
Just for clarification, you're convening as the county council?
No, as the Urban Services Commission.
Okay, okay.
Weston? Yes? No?
We're gonna have to order a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know who's handling the
Mr. Wilbur?
For the Urban Services Commission, we have the president from the Village Downriver HOA, and we have Mr. Keith Fisher here, and we have Mr. Wilbur as well.
Okay, all right. Gentlemen, if you would please join us, that'd be fine.
So we're skipping the first three right up here. We'll go back to them, Larry.
Go back.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult, Larry.
They've been here a while, they can jump the line a little bit.
Yeah. Learn more about
I think
gypsy
it-
moth.
Yeah. I think the initial adjournment would still have to state the fact that we at one time are going to be going into the Urban Services Commission.
Okay.
I think so. Mr. Wilbur, why don't you start out for us?
Right, I think there's 2 points for the Urban Service Commission to discuss tonight. One is, as I understand it, there's a bill that the condo association would like to submit for repair work that needs to be done out there. And I thought that certainly you can address that, what work needs to be done and how much the bill is. And the second issue would be to discuss a protocol going forward for submission of bills and how it's going to be handled. I think Laura would be involved in it on behalf of the Urban Service Commission, and certainly Dawn Parks on behalf of the Finance Office for both bills and billing and receipt of billings. Sure.
Make your way.
Sure, let's have Dawn up here too.
I agree with Mr. Wilbur. I mean, it should be a fine-tuned process, in all honesty.
Correct.
It shouldn't have to come before this. And we have suggested before, didn't we, in some of our other work sessions, that maybe there should be a committee as opposed to bringing everything to the county council for approval, that the county council might appoint a commission or committee that could handle it?
You could appoint expertise, engineering expertise to interface on the sewer plant repairs. Obviously, ultimately, the approval of money out of the replacement fund is with the Urban Service Commission. You would have to say yes.
Maybe a shortcut would be for these gentlemen to be able to discuss it with whoever this commission might be, and then they could come to us.
Right. Right.
I guess my thoughts would be how often does this, before we go into appointing a different commission, is how often will we be doing this, once a year?
Well,
two or
right
3
now,
years,
this has
or-
not occurred until just recently.
Yeah.
It's been
Yeah.
10 years since this
So it might
was
not be.
put in place, so it could be, who knows, 5 years down the road, not that frequent, hopefully. But
Yeah.
the process right now states that the homeowners can submit the invoices to the Urban Commission for review and then reimbursement of whatever. To speed up the process, it would probably be a little more beneficial to have the contractor or vendors to submit their invoices to the Urban Commission or whoever is going to be reviewing, have them review, determine what can be paid or not paid, and then move forward so they can pay them, and then we would end up paying whatever the balance is, if there is a balance. Just take out the middleman, which is us basically, because all has to go through the commission anyway for final approval for payment.
You would still be dealing one-on-one
We
with the
would-
contractors.
We would still deal with the contractor, but they would submit the bill to the commission for review, or whoever the designated person would be.
Right.
And then they would approve whatever payment they feel is appropriate for that invoice. And then, of course, the contractor or vendor would bill us the balance if there is a balance. So therefore, we would just eliminate everything else, and then you pay the vendor instead of having to pay us, then we pay the vendor.
Well, how would we know then that it's work that's being approved by you? I mean, wouldn't it seem to be like the HOA would?
The vendor would be talking to us first anyway.
Yeah.
Because they would be letting us know what needs to be replaced or what's an upgrade, and then with the cost for maintenance, expenses for labor and whatever else is involved.
Well, it seems to me that we might need something from the HOA just saying, you know, we agree, so that we know that you guys are okay with it, you know, that it, and then comes to it, I guess we have to pay for it, but we need to know that it's authorized and something by you. So,
And
yeah.
if it's submitted to you, all it is a phone call to one of us, or to me in particular, right now.
Would it make sense possibly to have Mr. Baker as sort of the liaison for us? Dallas Baker would be the liaison here?
As far as reviewing,
Come on up here and join us.
Dallas, why don't you use the podium there, because we're out of mics here.
Right.
What I'm suggesting is just someone that can come to the urban services and say, okay, here's what they want, it's good, it looks, everything's in order, and we recommend it.
You're just talking about somebody from Public Works, in other words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the challenge comes when you're facing down something about whether or not it's truly an emergency or not, and if it needs to be repaired right away. I would recommend, for instance, I know GMB did the design of, still. That better? Okay. I'd recommend, GMB did the design of the plant. They have a wastewater treatment plant operator on staff that could potentially be reviewing these billings. Again, if something comes forward and they say, something's gone up and broken and needs to be repaired right away, we would need some type of outside expertise to ascertain whether or not that's truly an emergency repair. I mean, I can certainly look at the bills like I did this last time and use some common sense and critical thinking and my knowledge of wastewater to say, well, yeah, this is something that should go or shouldn't go. But if it becomes something of that might cause them to lose compliance with their permit, I certainly don't want to sit there and weigh my expertise on that. That's something I think should be coming from a third-party operator that has more knowledge of the system than I do.
we currently have Biosystems is the company that does the maintenance, daily maintenance on the system itself. So they're pretty well up to speed with what's working or not working. And we've also had recently Chris Carter from Maine, who built this system, come down and also make the upgrades and stuff, because that's what it was recommended to him from them. So we already have two parties that are involved in the actual running and monitoring of our system. I'm not sure we need a third party to do that. If they recommend that we have our upgrades or replacements, I'm assuming their expertise in their field, and that their word should be that's what we go on.
Right.
The only comment I would make would be that the Urban Service Commission, I believe, needs to have approval and okay, you might say, on their side of the table that it's an appropriate expenditure.
Right, that's what I'm saying. If they tell us that it needs fixing, then we send the invoices to the Urban Commission or whoever we're supposed to.
Well, perhaps the invoices could go to Dallas. Dallas could interface with someone that's a sewer engineer, and then a recommendation can come back to the Urban Service Commission.
Well, we have to get it from somewhere, because there
Yes.
has to be someone that represents the urban, we are not engineers up
Right.
here.
Right.
And,
Right.
and we're gonna have to simply, I would say we would simply greenlight everything they said, because we have no way of knowing whether there's something askew. The only one who knows whether or not whatever they're doing is justifiable as an expense for us to approve, it's gonna have to be some other third party, and I'm afraid it's gonna have to be associated with the county, since the Urban Services Commission is obviously associated with the county.
Right.
But that's all I'm suggesting. There has to be some liaison between this group and our group.
Right.
And it's just, not for a lot of work, but just to sit there and say, well, we reviewed it, it looks okay.
I think you're spot on with that. I think fundamentally our issue right now is, with all due respect, it's who do we talk to?
Right, exactly.
And so this current situation was such that it kind of became an emergency, because it was, well, hey, where's this money coming from? Where's the pot? Who's the gatekeeper, so to speak? And I appreciate Dallas is jumping in and emailing us back, but I think that's a good point, allowing Dallas to say, hey, this is in my field, this is in my wheelhouse, I see it, this is what that means, or if it goes above that, I don't think we would have any problem with
The other
you depending on a representative in an engineering field to say, hey, this is legitimate.
Well, we could do that. I mean, we could do, I mean, somebody mentioned George Miles and Bureau or a local company. It's gonna add another cost, I would assume, to your neighborhood, unless they agree to do it, as some type of a committee to represent the Urban Service Commission, a volunteer commission or committee.
That'd be great, really.
Just trying to get something that's,
That'd be great, but I doubt it, knowing how the engineering people run their lives, but in any case.
But, and, because also, I mean, do we have to worry about whether or not Mr. Baker is bonded or not? He says, okay, it's all right, something goes upside down, then maybe he would leave himself open for some type of.
Yeah, and that's exactly my concern, is if something comes across my desk and, I'd look at it and say, well, there's two steps here that we're considering. There's one, there's the emergency repair step. Hey, this has to get fixed right away. They submit something, if I determine it's not, and it turns out it is, and that delay causes them to violate their permit, that responsibility is now on me and my engineering's license. And then there's the steps of, okay, we have routine repairs coming up that need to be made. I would think at that point, they would submit billings for what they want to do, not what they have done, to get the okay from the commission to get approval on, and then the commission says, yup, you're good, as opposed to spending the money and then coming to the commission and saying, hey, can we spend the money when we already did?
Well, maybe in theory, but maybe not in the real world either. When you're talking,
Well, you're talking about a sewer plant that.
Sewer
that
issues,
we
yeah.
cannot have fail for
Yeah.
any reason whatsoever, and to go through that step process, which it needs to be gone through, but it does delay the repairs, which could impact our services.
oh, yeah. Mr. Taylor, you look like you,
Well, yeah, just a couple things. I think the new shared facilities agreement gives a pretty good rough outline of how to proceed. Dallas mentioned part of it,
okay.
having to distinguish between emergency and normal. Obviously, the way you want to tweak it as to who contacts whom and that sort of thing, I guess, could be decided on more or less a case-by-case basis. The particular items, at least as I see it, and I'm not an engineer either,
Right.
but it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of question that they're needed. If somebody wants to go to the expense of having GMB or someone else sign off on it, we could do that, I guess. It's not a whole lot of money in the total sense. Now, it is a fair hunk of money in terms of our fund. And the other thing I wanted to kind of maybe hit home to the folks from Village Downriver is please look at if you haven't already, look at the agreement, shared facilities agreement, particularly item 6, I believe it is, that discusses this. Because on top of everything else, there's a point there at which if the fund gets depleted to a certain extent, then it's got to be replenished by you folks over and above your annual payment. We kind of set it up that way with a lot of discussion. This is a fairly good drawdown in terms of what's in the fund right now. I don't know that we're up to that point or not. I haven't, maybe Keith knows those numbers. I haven't looked at them, so I don't know. But just bear that in mind, because you're putting in roughly $7,000 a year in your payments, and right now I think these two bills together are about 14 or 15. So, it's going down somewhat. Now, hopefully in 2 or 3 years, it'll be back up to where it is and maybe beyond that. So I think that, it can be worked out on a come-as-you-go basis.
I'll only say that Mark has done a great job
Yeah.
at getting back into that. And it's great now to have an agreement that the people that live there
Yeah.
understand and know that it's there. correcting the ills of the past, so to speak, but it is what it is, and we recognize that.
Yeah.
And I think the point of why we're here really tonight is to understand, not only from our perspective, from the county's perspective, how do you want it handled? How do we want to go forward so that we're not coming here whenever we need to
Yeah, I
come?
mean,
Hopefully it's not on a budget session.
I mean, I think the short answer is obviously if it's an emergency, you would get that in
Right.
PDQ. And if it's just general replacement, somebody's saying, well, this now is bumping up on its life expectancy and you don't really want to have a failure, so replace it. And imagine they would be probably more significant items. Then that, I think, needs to be probably looked at a little bit more
Sure.
differently than if it's an emergency.
And I think it'll be fine-tuned, because again, as Mark spoke about, the biosystems people that technically we're hiring them, they're gonna come with a pretty detailed report that's going to say, this nut, this
Yeah.
bolt, whatever, and then at that point, it gets turned over to whomever. At that point,
Yeah.
then you invoke GMB that essentially is reviewing a change order nonetheless. So they're equipped to handle that. So I don't think that's a big expense.
Is the Urban Service Commission okay with that approach on the repair approval side?
Okay with this?
Because we can put this down in writing and have it approved by resolution.
That works for,
Makes sense.
Okay.
Okay? And then the other side of it is what Bob was alluding to, the billing side, where, per the agreement, you have quarterly billings of
Correct.
that 7,700.
Correct.
And you've got about 43,000, I think, in there right now that you're gonna draw down. And if it's more than a 25% drawdown, then it's supposed to be brought back up again.
Right.
Through a
So-
special assessment?
It can be through a special assessment, but the county, the Urban Service Commission wants to see a fund there,
Right,
really to protect you.
right.
Yeah.
So do we. We agree.
And so one of the discussion points, I think, was, do we want to have the billing come out from Laura, from finance? How do you want to work that so that it's a smooth operation?
Let me ask this question. How
Yeah.
was it handled before? Because however it was handled wasn't done right. So
Yeah,
we need to make sure, as you know,
yeah.
it was done correctly, and that's why we had all the snafus we had. So how was it handled before? Was it handled through finance?
I'm not sure how it was handled.
Apparently it wasn't handled.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, I'm sure it happened.
I just saw the shared facility agreement when this came back to play. Had never
Yeah.
seen one in the office.
So how do we make sure that, unfortunately, through the change of personnel in some cases, like we've had in finance, and it could happen anywhere, how do we
Yeah.
make sure that this thing stays on top of the heap, I guess is a good way to put it, so.
is there any precedent for this? I mean, how,
Yeah.
does the county do this anywhere else? I mean, is there a model we can follow? Or is
no,
this, we're breaking ground here?
Yeah, we're breaking ground on this.
In Wicomico.
In Wicomico.
In Wicomico.
Other counties.
Certainly.
The point I think that Dawn made and to Laura and I was a lot of money just comes across the counter down at finance. And what we don't want to do is have the money that would come in from the residents end up in the Bank of America, which is the council's or the county's bank. And when there's an account over in the Bank of Hebron for this
one,
reserve
yes.
fund. We just want to keep it as a separate process.
Can they deposit the money in their bank and have the bank relay financials to us so the finance department can keep track of it? So the money wouldn't have to come to the county office building?
That's a question of monitoring. I mean, the bill would certainly have to come out from the county, the quarterly billing to
Right.
the condo association.
Which
Then-
they don't necessarily, the condo association, we would not be able to generate a bill. This is gonna be off the books, the bill. So the money, there isn't a bill for money to pay in the technically in the system. Laura and I spoke about it, and we talked about a one-time, kind of in a letter format. I received the same format from the state for what we pay for SDAT annually. They give me one bill, it has our 4 quarterly payments on it, going out once a year. Then from Council, or Urban Service Commission, the money coming in, and then I'll get it from Laura and take it to Hebron to deposit it. My concern, again, just like what Paul said, is that the money coming in across the counter is going to get intermingled with our tax money or urban service, sewer billing, and it's gonna go not where it's supposed to go.
This was kind of where I'm coming from. So we go to Laura, go to you go to the bank with it. Can't we simplify that? You know, a lot of rental agents set up accounts at banks where they're folks that rent homes from them and just go to the bank and pay the payment by the week or by the
Make the
month.
deposit.
And then, of course, I'm sure the landlords monitor that pretty close right now. But, I mean, can we do that to simplify this? And
I think with 4 payments a year, that you really don't need that level of simplification. I mean, I think it would be better that the check come into this building, either to Dawn or to Laura, and then either Laura or Dawn can take it to Hebron. I mean, I think that's probably the better way to do it. Then you know your payments are coming in and don't have to go ask the bank or look at statements.
banks, most of the time, you can just go online and check and make sure it's
Yeah,
there.
but I mean, I just think that's a good way to do it. I mean, for 4 payments a year, you're not talking about a whole lot of time or effort.
For audit purposes, I'd like to have a copy of it.
Yeah.
I'd like to have a copy of the check that's being deposited to keep for, if you call for an audit of the account, that we have all of that available. I will have bank statements, but I would not have a copy of the actual physical check.
So we've got a situation here. We have an Urban Services Commission. We don't have a staff.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion? And this is, pardon me, I tend to think out loud sometimes, so feel free to shoot holes in this. You know, we have a community that has, you know, we went through a pretty intensive process of making sure that they had startup money in their bank account to cover the operation of this wastewater treatment plant. They now are putting money, additional money every year into that account to make sure that they can keep running it. We also have it in the agreement that we have to get annual reports about the status of the operation of that plant. And we want to make sure that we're making sure that the finances are in good shape so that 2 or 3 years down the road, we don't get someone calling up and saying, hey, we've got no money and our thing's failing. So really, a lot of the stewardship of this fund should be on the homeowners. If they put the money into the account and say, we get quarterly statements once a quarter, statements about how much money's in that account, and any expenditures have documentation with it showing how that money was spent, so we know it's being spent on the plant. That would help satisfy our financial peace of mind that, hey, look, they've got money in there and it's being spent appropriately. And on the engineering side of it, whether they spend it on a nut or a bolt or a pump, or whether they spent it right then or there was a plan repair, we're just really interested on the engineering side of, is this plant operating correctly, which is involved with the annual reports that we'd be getting and potential annual inspections that we can conduct. So if we get annual reports about the status and operation of the plant, and we get quarterly financial statements about the health of the finances, I would think that that would satisfy the county's peace of mind moving forward.
Well, you said the counties, but this is the Urban Services.
Well, the Urban Service
So
Commission.
who is it that's going to make sure that the repairs are sufficient and approved and within reason? I mean, are we observing the financials? Are we observing the?
We'd be observing the
brick and mortar?
financials on a quarterly basis, but it really would be the stewardship of the homeowners. They have a vested interest in making sure that when they flush their toilets, it's going where it's supposed to go. So they have a trusted relationship with their wastewater treatment plant operator. He comes forward to them and says, hey, guys, I need to repair this pump. I need X number of dollars. Their HOA board gets together, approves it, dispenses the money. they provide documentation to us that the money that they've been spending out of their account once a quarter is truly is going to that repair. And on our side, the engineering portion, our concern is just that the plant is operating correctly. How they are operating it, whether they go left or right, is less of a concern that they are not violating their permit and then everybody can flush their toilets. So we'd be looking at it more from the big picture side than trying to drill down into, well, are you spending this on a pump? Are you spending this on a replacement irrigation line? You know,
Yeah, you make a good valid point there, you know. 'Cause, I mean, I'm looking at just what was turned in, and from my perspective, what I'm not gonna get involved in is the fact that they charge you $3.28 for snacks. I don't wanna get involved in that, right?
They're pretty important to my 7-year-old.
Yeah. You guys know that that's what happened, and that's what they billed you for, and I can only assume that the next time you do business, maybe with this company or not, you'll say, hey, what was that?
I think, and then the two things, if in fact we paid for that person and something wasn't right, we as general consumers would have recourse to go after said company that says,
Yeah.
hey, you replaced the nut, you were supposed to replace the bolt, it doesn't work. We've got to answer to the permitting office. So I think that simplifies a lot of stuff on your side of the fence. The snacks bill to me was, we were in a tough spot. You know, we were in a position where imminently people were not going to be able to flush their toilets. So we weren't in a position of
Oh, yeah.
leverage.
I'm not,
No,
Right.
you're
Here's gonna
absolutely
micromanage
right.
this thing.
It's
Yeah.
something that we need to pay attention to moving forward.
Yeah.
But, and I think, again, that's why we're here, to avoid the
Yeah.
$3.25 for the bag of M&Ms.
But like Dallas said, that's not our role either.
Right,
Our role,
it isn't.
I think, actually, our role, I think, is just to approve the expense.
Right, you're an
Period.
oversight.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Even if it's a rubber stamp or whatever they call it. I just think we have
Yeah.
to approve that.
Mr. President?
Yes.
May I ask a question? We have a bank account at bank of, which bank is it?
Hebron.
Hebron? Is that under the corporate EIN number of your association?
I don't believe so, no.
Is it under the corporate EIN number of the county?
For the funds, replacement
Yes.
funds? I have nothing to do with that account.
Where
so
is the
I'm-
check?
I
Checkbook.
wasn't involved.
I don't have the checkbook.
Who does?
There is not a checkbook, it's a savings escrow account.
Okay. And you don't know whose EIN number's on it?
I'd have to pull it. I wasn't involved in setting up the account.
Okay.
I was pulled in to be involved after the account was already
Okay,
set
we can
up.
talk about that later.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Well, Larry made a comment in the invoice that says deposit paid check number 1559 on February 28th. Whose
That was-
check was that?
That was the check that what was for the amount?
That was for 3,500.
That was from Steve Pusey. He paid
Okay, so that's a little
he
different.
paid the deposit.
Okay.
So that was from the HOA account.
That was from the HOA
That
account.
was from the HOA account.
Well, then you got another check that's 1003. Looks like it's from a different checking account. So where'd that come from?
You will have to give me more information than that, I'm sorry.
So there was two payers here, two different people paying bills here?
Two different people paying bills.
Yeah, you said Steve Pusey paid part of it. and-
Steve turned the HOA over to us April 1st.
Mhm.
Anything that occurred before April 1st, Steve Pusey took care of. Anything after April 1st, I took care of.
It says Village Downriver Homeowners Association check number 1561 for USA Blue Book pumps. I'm assuming that's probably a checking account your homeowners association
It
has,
is.
for which you need to be reimbursed.
Correct.
Yeah.
So do they need a separate checking account?
Yes. Yeah, it can't be, I don't want, for my purpose, I do not want them combined. They need to be separated because that account needs to be only utilized for appropriate purposes. And you put the money together, everybody knows what happens when you do that. They commingle, they commingle and then they get spent inappropriately by mistake most likely, but we can't afford to have that. So if we did the two account thing, that would be fine, as long as there is somebody that is make an approval on the request for replacements or upgrades. I mean, the people that advise us is Biosystems and the custom controls from Maine. And if they tell me that that's what I need, that's what I need, because they're the ones that run the system. But if it came down to the monies and the Urban Council Commission had to be involved in the approval of that, that is fine also. It's just that all I want to do is to make sure that the process is a quick process going through so that there's no delay in the repair work or the upgrade work.
Okay.
Because the one coming from Maine is usually, it's a three-month process for him to get that and move that and come down here and do it.
Mr. Wilbur, what's our end game right
Right.
here? Do we have to approve something?
Look, tonight, no. I think
Right.
we're having a discussion, looking for guidance. My thought is we have a protocol about approving invoices, work, and have a protocol about billing and collecting for the fund. I think staff can develop that protocol and present it back to Urban Services Commission.
Okay.
And if it meets with your approval, then put it in a resolution, and that's the rule.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing something whereas all we do is just simply
Yeah.
just
You want
Prove it.
staff to bring it to you
and
and
say,
say,
hey, we've
it's
done it,
good or
it's
it's
here,
bad.
good. And we say, fine, great, thanks.
Yeah, I just want to make one other, just general suggestion. I think on any of the invoices that are issued for the system, repairs, replacements, the invoices should be to the homeowners association, not to the commission.
Right.
Correct.
And that when payments are made, probably the best way to do it, in my view, would be that we would cut a check from our replacement fund account and possibly make it payable jointly to the association and to the particular firm that's going to be paid. So that way we know that that money is going to be paid to discharge that particular obligation. There may be cases because of this 25% factor where a particular bill has to be paid partially by the commission and partially by the HOA. So I think, now that's probably going to be the exception to the rule, but it could occur. So I think we just need to keep that straight, so when you look at the records, that's the way it is, because I think, as somebody pointed out, if they don't put the right nut on the bolt or vice versa, that's the HOA's problem, not the commission's problem. I mean, if they've got to bring a suit against a contractor, they're going to have to bring it, not the commission. So you want to just make sure that that's all set up that way. It's not that hard to do. I mean, we're not talking about something that's extremely difficult.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
Okay.
Anything else for you?
I think
Do we have to
We have a
put together a
plan.
resolution to approve this?
Right, we need to present a protocol back to all of you. If you're okay with it, then we'll put it in a resolution that you can adopt.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Hope you learned something.
Okay, so we really skipped down a whole bunch, didn't we? Entertain a motion to adjourn as the Urban Services Commission so we can reconvene in open work sessions with Wicomico County Council. Second. Yeah. Sorry, Jack.
Hey, I tried to help you, Jack.
Boy,
I think Laura did too. We're all in this together.
whatever.
Those things happen. All know.
Good evening.
Do you have a nap back there?
This is a question that, to my knowledge, has never come to us before. And it has to do with the terms of an easement purchase that the county made back during, I should say, a different time in the economy. And at that time, you may remember, we had a local county agricultural preservation program that was funded through ag transfer tax. And that was when real estate transactions were quite high. I would say that it's your classic good news, bad news. You know, the good news is there was money in the fund. The bad news is there was a lot of land coming out of agriculture, hence causing that fund balance. It's nowhere near that today, and frankly, I think that's a good thing. But this was a purchase, we made 2 purchases from the Harcum family, and this request before you, as outlined by the executors of the estate of Glenn Harcum Sr., has to do with their request to separate, and I'll use that word separate rather than subdivide, separate a portion of the easement area in order for the land itself to be sold. The land would still be subject, still fully encumbered by the conservation easement that we paid for. The thing that's also a little bit unique about this situation is the time to maximize the amount of dollars available. We partnered with Lower Shore Land Trust. What they brought to the table was some federal money. And at the time, there was money available to something called a federal farm and ranch land program. And it mirrored quite closely our interests. The easement documents sometimes are a little bit different when you get involved in that with that particular federal program, but not relative to the provision that's before you today. Because the standard agreements say that when you establish an easement area, that it should not be separated. That being said, it does provide an out, and that is for something, and I quoted this in my summary letter to you, except for extraordinary reasons. Those extraordinary reasons are not defined, but again, it's there for a purpose. The extraordinary reasons can be determined by the grantees. The grantees are Wicomico County and the Lower Shore Land Trust. So it actually takes both of those organizations to take action to, I'll say, consent to it. So that is the request that you have before you this evening. So the executors of the estate have provided you with a sales agreement that has been entered into with a local farmer, and they are requesting your consent to be released. The emphasis again is property cannot be developed, all the terms of these remain in place. The 60 acres that they're looking to separate, technically under subdivision is already separated because it's at the other side of a county road. It's Neathen Church Road. So in terms of land records, they do have to complete a survey because it's never been sold separately from the rest of the family holding. But it can be easily defined. It stands alone. It would still be used for farming purposes, and they would request that the council that the county council and executive grant consent.
Thank you, Mr. Lennox. Questions? John? John, do you have a question?
Yeah, Jack, if we agree to this and Lower Shore Land Trust does not, it doesn't go through.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's got to be, have you talked to Lower Shore Land Trust?
Yeah, we have. I've been in close contact with the executive director, with Kate Patton. They have their own, I'll call it bureaucracy. They have their own process. They have a lands committee that it goes before. They have visited it already and asked some questions. That committee would make a recommendation to their general board. That has not happened yet. We're expecting that to happen this month.
Larry?
Yeah, Mr. Lennox, who would really want to buy the property that is in a conservation easement? Is going to be farmland that is going to be farmed?
Yes, it would have to be.
Okay.
Right.
Another question. Does that take this property off the county tax rolls?
No, it doesn't affect it at all.
So the new owner would still have to pay
That's-
property taxes on that 60 acres?
That's correct. Obviously, in the way the properties are assessed, it has an agricultural assessment to it. And so it's much lower than what we would pay for our homes. But no, it doesn't affect the tax status.
Because I've had people contact me and they were worried about that with a previous easement.
Easements in general?
Yeah, well, from the land conservation.
Sure. The encumbrance of an easement, which is already in effect, obviously decreases the value of the property, which is why the price per acre is probably less than what it would be if it was developable. It is not, and it will not be developable.
I mean, it seems to me that the spirit of the program is being followed here. It's just under a different owner. I mean, there's not a change in the conservation status of the land. The same purpose of the land is going to be going forward. It's just that, technically, it requires approval to divide the land, even though everything's going to continue much the same as it was before. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
Do you see any reason why we shouldn't do it?
I don't. I know that there are some, and I don't want to quote any of the skeptics personally, but there are some questions about whether we're doing it for someone's financial benefit, whether or not, you agreed to the easement, therefore you should stick to the easement. Should we be getting something else out of this? I don't know what that would be. I think we can all agree, and as outlined by the request, there have been some extraordinary in my opinion, some extraordinary circumstances, and I think we should let the process work its way through. We know the purchaser is an active farmer. I mean, we know it's going to be used for that. And by the way, there is a monitoring requirement, and as part of the deal, Lower Shore Land Trust gets out there and has to review it every year. They've been following the program, and I'm sure that will be continued with the new owner.
I have no problem.
Anybody else? Okay, so, will this come back to us?
We would look to schedule it, Ms. Hurley,
At the
for
next meeting.
resolution.
Okay. Everybody clear?
Does that have to be a public hearing or anything?
No, sir.
It's very unusual circumstances, but I understand. As Mark said, the intent's still there as
Yeah.
far as the conservation.
Yeah, most of the easements in the county are called malfeasements, and that would require state approval as well. So fortunately, we don't have that step in this situation.
All right.
Great. Thank you all very much.
Yeah. Sorry, I say so.
No problem at all.
Next item on the agenda is the proposed charter amendment. Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how you want me to proceed, because at the last meeting, it was sort of left on the table as to what anybody wanted to do. I can run through them again if you want me to. I mean, I have a list of 10, which was the same 10 we discussed previously. I mean,
Well, the council's aware of those 10.
yeah, as I recall, the thought was you were going to narrow it down to 2 or 3 items.
Does anybody have an idea here of what they'd like to see, how many they would like to see to begin with on the ballot?
I have an idea. I'd like to see it revert to the Charter Review Committee and have them review it, since technically we don't have the expertise to do this type of thing, and we shouldn't be doing it. It should be up to the Charter Review Committee. But once we've gotten past that, and apparently we have at the last meeting, whether we did or not, I think we could probably narrow it down pretty easily with, again, going through and just doing a consensus, whether yay or nay, or anybody has any immediate concerns.
I think that, it's a good point, John. I mean, I think because we have 10, we know we don't want 10. It's going to be a crowded ballot anyway. I think we should look at any amendments that we do are absolutely necessary for a functional part of how we operate, not housekeeping measures. I'm not so much interested in housekeeping measures at this time, because that can come at another time. It doesn't compromise how we operate, a simple housekeeping measure. I'm more concerned about events that have occurred, maybe where we found that corrections need to be made just so we operate better.
I can add one thing I should have said previously. On one of the items, it's item number 5, the county internal auditor, and the amendment there, the subject of it. As I said at the last meeting, I've seen language in another county's code. Wasn't quite sure at the time whether it was in their code or the charter. We've determined it was in their code. That does much of what was proposed under that particular item, so that could be done by amendment of the code, I believe, rather than having to have a charter amendment.
Well, and Mr. Taylor,
And
I was gonna ask a question about that. So do you think that, I mean, obviously the intent, the intent of that's clear, of what we're proposing is clear. You think everything in that proposal, could be done by code and there wouldn't be any need to change the charter? I mean, basically stop any interference from internal auditor investigation?
I'll have to think about it, but I think much, if not all, of what is listed in item 5 can be done by code amendment.
Yeah, I mean, if we could do that by code, it would be both quicker and, could take effect within 60 days and wouldn't have to go through the charter process. So that'd definitely be preferable if we could do that by code.
Yeah, and it could also be modified from time to time.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you're thinking we could take 5 off.
Well, I believe it can be done by amending the code, so I think you could take that off,
Take it
yes.
All right.
Okay.
Could we direct you to drop legislation for our consideration at the soonest possible meeting?
Certainly, yeah.
Okay. I don't want to step out of bounds here, but the rest of the council's okay with that, I think. We've all identified that.
Legislation for what? For taking it off this list?
No, for
Making it a code.
ensuring that the county internal auditor cannot be interfered with
Oh.
during his or her investigations, so.
And would the same thing apply for item number 6? Which comes under the Code of Home Rule status.
Well, item number 6 was really purely housekeeping, just to change where it says Article 25A in the charter. Article 25A was repealed by the General Assembly
Okay.
4 or 5 years ago, and it's now in the local government article.
All right.
So that was purely housekeeping. I don't think that's,
All right, so we can take 6 off.
I think that could wait easily till
right.
Charter Review Committee.
So right now, we can take 5 and 6 off. Let's go back up to 1. Add a new charter section to define local governing body.
This was a combination between housekeeping and also somewhat substantive. And the reason being that there are many provisions of the state law that refer to the local governing body. And under the definition of local governing body, in many of them, I won't get into all the weeds on this, or we could be here for a long time, it says the local governing body is either the county council just by itself, or the county council and the county executive, depending on what the charter says. And our particular charter doesn't say anything. So it kind of leaves you in somewhat in legislative or legal limbo. I think probably right now, the way most of these sections are worded in the code, if you went to a court and had to define it, it would probably be the council, but what do you do when you have a situation where the state law reads like that and then just leaves you hanging? You just don't know. So
Understood.
that was why I suggested that the charter could be amended to define that. Again, I think that could wait. We've obviously been operating all right.
Yeah. All right,
But
we'll
on
let
the
it
other
wait.
hand, if you want to do it, you can do
Let
it.
it, let it wait. We'll let it wait. Number 2, discussion on adding term limits for both council members and the county executive. Anybody want to do term limits?
I'm the only one that does, and of course, we already discussed it. And I'm sure I'm still the only one that is. So I have no problem with what the rest of the council decide, well, of course
I think it
do,
might be,
but-
I think it might be a good idea, John, but we don't have enough votes, so.
That's true. Thanks.
right.
Thanks for your support.
The number 3, compensation removed within 15 days after the beginning of the 4th term, each place immediately following. Oh, this is the compensation.
Yeah, this is the one where I sent you all the memorandum, and one of the reasons I did it is because it's so complex, it's a little hard to remember each time you do it, and I've got my memorandum here. I'll just read, to try to save time, I won't read the whole 2 pages, I'll just read what I concluded. If the charter and the county code were appropriately amended, it would be possible for a future council to act at any time during its term on a future commission's, that's the salary commission's, recommendation in regard to compensation of the county executive and the sheriff during the next succeeding term of those offices. And the reason for that is because the state code doesn't really say that you can't. It doesn't address that particular matter in the state code. However, the state code does address the council's salary, and I'll read you the next paragraph of my summary. However, because of a requirement discussed below in the Maryland Code, it may be impossible for a future council to act prior to the 4th year of its term upon a future commission's recommendation in regard to compensation of members of the next succeeding council. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff there, but what it means in so many words is we're kind of stuck with what the Maryland Code says, and we don't have the power to change it. So I think the thinking from the last meeting was not to do anything on this. But maybe Ms. Hurley can recall too, but that was my view, that it seemed to be that you all were, because you couldn't do it for all of the offices that are normally reviewed by the Salary Review Commission, that you just decided to leave everything like it is.
Well, I'll tell you, I think we can also think for ourselves on a lot of this as well. We've been given the recommendation this year. It's a recommendation we can apply next year. We don't have to, it's always felt that when this commission comes before us, that's a decision you guys have to make within a month or 2 months. We have to do it this year. It is something that we could do next year.
No, we can't.
Not if it's charter change.
No,
I'm not talking about the charter change.
No, resolution.
But the reason for the
Change
charter
in salaries,
change
yeah.
was the fact that, there was a lot of concern, the fact that we didn't take that
No,
advice.
It has to be in the 4th year of the council term,
Yeah.
as the charter stands.
Right, but they wanted to change that. Well, I see what you're saying,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
not all of us may be here after this election cycle, and Riley should be the first.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for looking out for me.
No, I mean,
I guess I could,
democratic process, John, we all have to get elected.
I guess I could vote for a big price.
Oh, so,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good to keep it uniform. If it's state law mandates that the council salary, the council can change its salary only in the 4th year of the term, the election year, essentially. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
we're locked in under state law
Yeah,
for council.
So
yeah.
the council, it makes sense to keep that in place for the executive, keep it all the same sort of system, basically.
okay,
That'd be my thought.
so we're locked in.
For council, you're not totally locked in because you could change the charter and the code with regard to the executive.
I got you. All right. Well, is this something that can wait 2 years?
I would think so, but that's just one person's view.
It's waited this long, so.
Yeah.
All right. Mark?
Yeah, I'm good with waiting, yeah.
Said, because I know that part of this is something
Yeah.
you're looking at. Okay, so we can wait on this one. Number 4, Charter Section 304C, Council Administrator Special Assistance, removed by resolution. Any comments?
What's it mean?
No, it's kind of vague to me right now.
Yeah, if you want a little background on this, it's a fairly short charter section. It says, experts, consultants, attorneys. The council may, at its discretion and subject to the provisions in its budget or supplementary appropriation by resolution, engage the services of experts, consultants, or attorneys to aid in its inquiries, investigations, or the drafting or codification of legislation. So it can do all of those things by resolution, and someone, I don't think it was me, wondering, should we take by resolution out?
Yeah, because I've already forgotten what created this problem.
Okay, so the background on that
Yeah,
particular
thanks.
one is during the fraud investigation, we went out and we hired a forensic auditor. And that was not initially approved by resolution. We later had to go back, once that was brought to our attention that the charter says you have to do this by resolution, we did do that. The question is, do you want the public to know if we had to hire a forensic auditor in the
It's
future?
hard to do it. Sometimes you need to do it so everybody doesn't know you're doing an investigation. Is that what you're
Correct,
saying?
yes.
But on the other hand, this would allow us to do anything without resolution in the appointments, which is shielding it from public view, which we shouldn't do either. So I think it's a dangerous thing to do to,
Could that be a code issue?
I think. it has
Well,
to
I
be
think
raised.
you'd have to change the charter, because right now it requires resolution.
And you're saying that if we were to remove resolution in this particular section, it would give us the authority to do what with that resolution?
To make any of those kind of appointments without public knowledge, basically,
So it
without
does-
resolution.
So if we choose to,
Hire a attorney or whatever,
so
any sort.
if we're going to choose to make this amendment, is there some other verbiage that has to be included in here to make it more specific?
I mean, there could be. I haven't
How's
thought.
everybody?
It,
Mr. Taylor, do you think there's
well,
something we have to have?
it could obviously be drafted so that it wouldn't be across the board.
Okay.
I mean, if you just take the words by resolution out right now, as Mr. Kilmer points out, that's then across the board for experts, consultants to aid in the drafting or codification of legislation and other things too. If the concern is that there are times when, such as in a fraud investigation, you don't really want to alert the potential targets of the investigation, that you're doing investigation, well, then that we could
Is there a
we
way
could
to
do
tweak
that.
it?
It's
Is there
gonna,
way
it's
to
gonna be
tweak
a
it
little
to-
more complex.
Is there a way to tweak it to address Councilman Kilmer's concerns?
Yeah, oh, yeah, sure.
All right, let's see what we can do maybe.
I have a question. Steve,
Yes.
you've taken all these courses on fraud investigation. What do the other counties and municipalities do?
I'm sorry, the question is, what do other counties and municipalities do? I don't know, I'd have to ask them, I'll be happy to get back to you, but our thinking is, for our county, is that when the internal auditor runs into a situation which, in the opinion of the council and the internal auditor, need an outside investigator, that we hire one. We've done it 2 or 3 times. The internal auditor is intimately involved in the daily operation of the county. If you have a situation where you need an independent, trained forensic auditor to solve a problem, you should be able to hire that forensic auditor without making it public.
But it should come through your office.
I mean, if you mean bureaucratically, should I hire him instead
Bureaucratically.
of the council?
Bureaucratically, we wouldn't have to do a resolution if it came through his office, correct?
I think that's a decision council has to make.
The council would still be obligated to make that decision, am I not correct?
Yes.
It's not going to allow anybody to do this. This only pertains to our responsibilities, our role.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly take the by resolution out on a selective basis.
Okay. All right, if you can tweak that, Mr. Taylor, we'll just see how that pans out. Number 7, Section 315A, confirmation of appointments, add Assistant Director of Administration, all Deputy Directors.
I was watching, last week, I think it was, I was watching Harford County, and it was the first meeting in April, and they voted on a department head and 2 assistant directors that night. And I looked at a couple other counties, they do the same, so I don't know why we're not doing it here.
If that's going to be done, then I think you'd probably also have to modify section 413 of the charter, where it talks about administrative appointments, within 6 months of an election, and temporary administrative appointments, because those are all about the sort of appointments too. So you just did the one section, you'd leave a loophole.
Run that by us again.
Well, there's 2 other charter sections that talk about administrative appointments, and they talk about department heads, temporary administrative appointments, temporary department heads.
Mhm.
You're going to change that section that you're talking about. You also need to change the language in those other sections, so you don't leave a loophole to, someone who's in there, prior, to an election or a temporary appointment. So
could we?
don't leave any loopholes if you're going to do this.
Okay, well, if we wanted to address those loopholes, could we do it all with just one charter amendment?
Change 3 sections with 1 amendment.
No, I believe they have to be individual.
Yeah, I think that's right.
If we move forward on this, We currently have 19 directors. And, you know, I look at the other half that we fund, which is the Board of Education. They have 105 administrators compared to our 19 directors. All we're doing is adding another layer of bureaucracy by vetting these people to eventually they'll get to the point where they become administrators, just like the Board of Education, I think. That's, you know, that's the way I look at it. I don't think we should get it involved in micromanaging the county too much.
I look at it a little differently. I understand what you're saying, John, but, you know, we had a situation back when we had our prior county executive that we had a assistant public works director that did not want to take the job and remained assistant public, did the job for 2 or 3 years.
No.
You know, we could have that happen in every department,
We could.
you know, because what's the difference? At will, and there's two.
You have
what's the-
exempt and non-exempt.
Exempt and non-exempt, you know, and that's the reason I heard that he wouldn't step up to the plate, whether that's correct or not. He never told me that himself, but, so that's my reason I would support this charter amendment.
Well,
Yeah.
you're talking about 800 employees and one person out of 800 employees.
No, you're talking about one person out of 19 departments.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah.
So, you
So-
know, and
so
I mean,
do we just keep growing this?
no, it's not, I don't think it's growing, and it takes, you know, we, for the most part, most of the time, take the advice of the county executive on who he wants to hire. We very seldom turn down people. We have done, but seldom. But the fact of the matter is if it could happen with a future county executive where if we turn somebody down, he just hired him as an assistant director and have him there anyway.
Good.
So, I think this is a little bit of insurance that those kind of types of things, that's loopholes, you know, it closes loopholes is what it does.
I agree.
And it doesn't grow the bureaucracy's already there, it's just a little more oversight of the bureaucracy.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they're already there. I mean, it's. it's
So
not-
we give them a title now because
No,
they've been
it's
approved
not
by
creating,
council.
it's not creating new
will.
positions.
They still got the same title, it's just that they've got to, they got to be
Applying
approved.
to existing titles.
Good
not-
luck.
We have to approve any new,
I'd like to do that
personnel.
now.
All right, we're going to leave it in.
We're going to leave it in, I'm sorry, and then are we going to add the additional ones that Mr. Kilmer?
I think it should be looked at the very least, maybe Mr. Taylor
Yeah.
can.
I know you said section 413, what was the other one?
And 414 for the
414.
temporary, maybe the temporary wouldn't apply, but it's something to look at because
Yeah, take a look.
they're all tied together in terms of appointments.
Thanks for pointing that out. Number 8, Charter Section 507B, Department of Law, should the county attorney review all contracts of the legislative branch of the government?
Yeah, I think this one, the idea here was,
Right.
should the charter be changed to remove contracts by the legislative branch of government from the section that says that the county attorney shall review and approve all contracts. So it's intended to be a subtraction or negative, not an addition.
And again, that came about as to some action the council took and was told that it was inappropriate, I believe. Is that right?
Yes.
I mean, in terms of importance, I'm not sure this ranks up there.
I'm not big on it unless somebody can convince me.
I think it can wait. All right. Section 508, Citizen Advisory Boards, add county council after county executive, so the county council can also appoint citizen advisory boards.
I believe on this that actually no action may be needed in order for the council to appoint either citizen advisory boards or possibly you might want to use some other terminology, maybe task force.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So that you don't get hung up in the section 508 which simply says that the county executive may appoint advisory boards. That particular section only has to do with advisory boards in regard to county administrative policies and programs, whereas the appointment by the council would presumably be almost entirely legislative.
Okay.
So I think that probably no action is needed there to do
Okay.
what you might want to do in the future.
Thank you, Bob. Section 708A, transfer of appropriations. Add the county executive, however, is to notify the county council of appropriations between general classification of expenditures within the same office or department that, in regard to a total over a certain dollar amount.
What's the plan to add a dollar amount?
Well, let's just say $1,000.
Okay.
Transfer of appropriation, add the county executive, however, is to notify the county council appropriations between general classification expenditures. Is that to keep funding where it's supposed to be?
Right now, the county executive can authorize the departments to transfer money in between, like from salaries to operating or capital. And I believe Mr. Taylor made the recommendation that perhaps over a certain dollar limit, council should approve it. We did do a little bit of research on this, and there are some other jurisdictions, I think Prince George's County and maybe Montgomery County have a dollar limit in theirs.
This says to notify, so it doesn't say we have to approve it. So it's just, we're make a charter amendment just so that someone notifies us?
I was going to comment on that.
Yeah.
I think if it's just notification, that could probably be done by code. Not totally certain sitting here tonight, but if that's all it is, now approval obviously would have to change the charter if you're going to get into
Is that what we're really looking to do, is to have is to establish some type of controls where approval should be required?
Yeah, some notification on, let's call it major
Notification or
changes.
approval?
Scratch notification.
Well, I think right now it's only talking in terms of notification.
Right.
Yeah,
What I'm
that's-
getting at is,
Yeah,
are we talking about notification or are we really talking about approval?
well, that's up to you all, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think
Right
notification
here.
is what we discussed.
So we're looking for something
Are we
stronger.
looking at are we looking at just dollars, or are we looking at equipment or
Vehicles.
anything else? How would you word that if you went other than just dollars?
Yeah.
I know a few years ago, there was some stuff transferred to the airport, 7 or 8 years ago, that, there was no money exchange. It ended up out of.
Oh, I see what you're talking about, goods
Yeah,
and
yeah.
physical things, yeah. Yeah, well, it could be capital items, yeah.
All right.
Capital and money.
If you could, maybe Bob,
Yeah.
try to see how you can work that, okay?
Are you interested both in approval and notice? That's,
Approval, I think.
I think so.
And then you can also do it by percentage, Baltimore County says transfers in excess of 10%. Prince George's County does a dollar amount, they got 250,000. So that's something to consider as well.
of course, remember, they have $1 billion
Yeah,
budget.
it's Prince George's County,
Yeah.
here
Well-
that would be $10.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think the amount, we would need to look to you on the guidance on amount as to how appropriations are made and what is more of an unacceptable level.
More reasonable for our county size.
Okay,
as
I'll
opposed
see if
to
I can do some
Prince
research on that.
Nothing detailed with facts and figures, just something from your experience with, in your position, just to get a feel for what's too much,
Okay.
okay? All
let
right.
me just make sure I understand the ones you want us to focus on. I think I got 3, 4, 7, and 10. Or I just want to make sure I've got them all.
4, 7, and 10,
Yeah, I had number 3 was off.
4, 7, and 10.
Is that the same as you had?
I had number 3 as being off.
Oh, yeah, no, but 4, 7, and 10 are the ones that you want
Yes.
further.
That we're
keeping.
Yeah,
Yes.
And number 7 also includes 2 additional.
yes.
Yeah, you have to figure out how to,
Just trying to be thorough, so.
it's a good point, good point. Okay, Right. Any other discussion? All right, where are we here? Next item on the open work session is the 2019 budget.
Whatever you put in will be good. Will be interesting. Okay, there if we have to.
Trying to set dates and times.
Yeah, I believe the internal auditors wanted to give a quick overview of what they have put together as far as how they want to present the budget to council. We also do need to talk about the budget session work dates and times as well,
Yeah.
though.
Okay. All right. It's getting late. Mr. Roser? Please.
Very quickly, we're in the process of reviewing the budget. We put department level evaluations for selected departments in your published materials in the front. All selected department sections, we included spreadsheet analysis calculated year-over-year increases and decreases. Increases, decreases in excess of 10% are color-coded green and red respectively. And additionally, we included subtotals by chosen categories, salaries, operating expense, capital expense, et cetera. And we're doing some more work that is forthcoming. We released another report yesterday. We would like to spend some more time with this budget. We've only had it for 9 working days, and we have a lot more information we'd like to submit maybe at the next meeting. If it fits.
Okay, all right. We appreciate what you prepared already.
Okay, so I need to get some idea from council as far as when they want to start having the budget work sessions and what times are convenient for you.
Okay. I guess some of that might depend on, I'd hate to have a work session, and then Mr. Roser might decide that it doesn't give him enough time to prepare something that he may feel really needs to be addressed. If there's any, red flags that come up, are there any particular?
It's two,
Too
with
early.
respect, it's 2 weeks to the next meeting, and we have done a lot of number crunching, so I don't really see that as a problem.
But if we start scheduling meetings with departments next week,
Oh,
are we going to overlook something in an interview with that department?
probably not for the most part. I would stay away from HR and personnel matters till we've had more chance to look at it.
Our absolute deadline?
The budget is supposed to be adopted by June the 1st, but that can be extended by resolution of the council to June the 15th.
Okay. What departments does the council feel at this time we should have discussions with? Obviously, the Board of Education is going to be the high priority.
I don't know if we need the fire departments in, but we need to discuss the fire, we will discuss the fire service budget, so I don't think we need to have the fire departments in. They got to increase. All but one seems happy.
Well, Sheriff's Department. Well, it brings up a good point. Should we meet with the Salisbury Volunteer Fire Department, and as far as what their grievances are?
I don't think we can do anything about it. I mean, it would be fine to meet with them. I think it would be cordial to meet with them, but we can't put it in the budget. We can't put it in the budget,
No? Well, the only thing we could do, it would be one of those other things where we would have to suggest as a recommendation,
I mean, we can't put roads money in the budget either, I mean, it's,
It's all recommendations.
yeah.
It really is.
I mean, I think what you have down here looks pretty good. I would recommend State's Attorney's Office. I think maybe we should have a budget meeting with the State's Attorney's Office and add that. State's Attorney, yeah.
So you're looking at what was, how it was scheduled last year.
What are you looking
For
at,
you.
Mark? What do you have that you
I'm looking at I guess, yeah, this was what it was 2017, but I mean,
Correct.
that's.
And we can use that if that's
yeah,
what
I
you
mean,
want to use.
That looked
Oh, I
pretty
thought
good.
you already had a schedule made out.
Well,
I was looking for
again,
that.
I thought it was, I thought the dates were a little messed up, but I'm like, oh, but in 2017 I see now, so. But if that's what we did last year, that,
What'd you do, dig it up?
no, it's in a brief book.
I didn't see it. Oh, okay.
I mean, I guess we probably don't need elections. I mean, that's, that may not be one we need. Haven't heard anything about their budget this year. And what was RPT? What is that?
Yes.
Oh, right, oh, yeah, okay.
There you go.
Yeah, well, I guess they're kind of important. We can probably have them, so.
So they're all together.
Well, we have education, we have library. I think definitely have to talk to the library.
Yeah, I don't think we necessarily need elections. Maybe swap out state's attorney.
What would we talk to the state's attorney about as far as their budget? I mean, we could have a work session if you want to know what their goals are or something, but I don't know if there's any.
I think it might be important to talk to the state's attorney's office.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Warwick?
Oh, yeah, bring them in. No,
Corrections?
yeah, corrections would be good, yeah.
Yeah, we really haven't met the young lady.
Yeah. All right, so we have the Board of Education, the Library, State's Attorney, Warwick Community College, and Department of Corrections.
Yeah.
Anybody have any other
Sheriff?
departments?
Sheriff, roads. Yeah, roads, public works, yeah.
Sheriff, Public Works?
You're not off the hook.
You can bring you can bring Lee with you though to share the.
Anything else?
I might suggest you may want to talk to IT. They've completely restructured how we pay for computers and software. It might be a good idea to talk to Ray about how that's working, just as a suggestion. And also, there's a lot of changes in our hospitalization. You may want to talk to HR about that.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about scheduling? How does
Yeah.
people feel about more, night? Not you, I know how you all feel. More night, I just had some issues in daytime here.
There's a lot
And I
going
don't
on.
want to inconvenience anybody else, but I just wondered if it would be.
Well, let's do this. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 9 different departments we want to meet with. 9 departments, okay? We have to take the 9 departments, figure out what the time frame is, and then break it down as to how many we want to handle a week. And then once we get an idea of that, then we can narrow it down to what days of those weeks we want to do it, right?
The process in the past is you guys tell me what departments you would like to bring in. We then take this list and we give it to Lisa Taylor in the executive's office, and then she coordinates with the department heads with them coming in. I mean, we would give her dates you guys are available as well. And
Yeah, I think,
times.
but we all, I believe we started that by establishing what days the council would be available.
Okay,
Because it doesn't do any good if a department head can make it.
Correct.
We can't, so.
that is correct.
So what we're gonna need to know is, what, all right, so we have how many weeks coming up here? 6 weeks, is that what we have, right? Maximum. I'd say 4 weeks, really, right?
Yes,
And then
because
a-
you got to have time for the budget work session,
And the
so you want to do a recap session.
All right, so we have to spread 4 weeks over the next 4 weeks. So beginning, let's say, Monday, the 7th of May, we'd have to have 2. We'd have to have 2 the next week, 2 the next week, and 1 the next week.
This schedule's only 2 days, isn't it?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we'd have to have 2 a week and then 3 on 1 week, right? That'll take us through the end of May. And that'll give us the 2 weeks in June to try to get make our final.
I would say we should try to meet with the department heads for the next 3 weeks, and then leave the wrap-up for the last week of May.
Okay, so we'd be, instead of 2, you're trying to put 3 in. Yeah, we could do 3 in 1 meeting.
Well, I mean, some of these could only be a half hour.
Yeah, that's very true.
That was
That's
gonna be my
very
next
true.
question.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
long
I'm
do you
thinking
want
days.
Schedule.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, Board of Ed probably needs to be longer, maybe roads needs to be longer, but
Okay.
IT could probably be a half hour. take a half hour for lunch, we don't need an hour for lunch. We fast. Or dinner, feed me tonight.
Yeah, make sure we get our donuts and our snacks.
I don't need any donuts.
So, time frame on IT and HR, you think, Mr. Roser?
I think you could squeeze them both in a day easily.
Not a whole day, maybe
mean,
just in a session, you mean?
Session, yeah.
Mhm. All right, so, IT and HR, okay. We could do that. I think we need to know what dates the council's gonna be available, though.
I mean, generally, if Joe wants to do evenings, that kind of works for me.
Yeah, but that's gonna hurt the departments too.
I guess.
So the library and the state's attorney's office would probably be rather quick, I would assume. Would we try to throw Warwick in there as well and do 3 in that 1 2-hour session of a day? Think that would work?
Yeah.
Okay. And IT and HR really isn't gonna be long, do you think?
No, you could throw something else on that day, I'm sure.
Put Public Works in there? So we do 1 day with the Board of Education, 1 with IT, HR, and Public Works, another meeting with Library, State's Attorney, and Warwick, and another with Corrections and the Sheriff. Do you think we can combine any of those? Do we need a separate day just for education? Or would we combine, I don't know who we would combine with that, really.
Did you say Rec and Parks? Are you guys bringing in Rec and Parks?
That wasn't,
We didn't say
that
it.
wasn't mentioned.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought that,
yeah, I thought,
yeah.
I'd like to talk to them about some stuff.
You said Rec and Parks?
I mean, they do have some new people and different
Yeah.
things going on.
Got some cabins, stuff.
I have a total of 10.
Well, it's, would it be a budget-related matter, or would it be a work session issue?
I gotta look more at the budget. I mean, we gotta figure this stuff out, so.
Well, it is gonna be like a work session. We're talking
Could we
money and
do-
programs.
Could we do some at our next council meeting?
Depends on what John puts on the agenda.
Right now, you have a very full agenda.
Yeah.
Huh? You do?
Absolutely. Okay.
Long day?
Yes.
Okay, so if we have IT, I'm just putting this out there, if we have IT, HR, and Public Works, I'm trying to figure out where we're gonna throw Recreation and Parks in. Do we wanna double that up with education?
Can I suggest that we just give Lisa some
Yeah.
dates and times and what departments we want to see and let her fill in the blanks? We
Yeah, I
can
was
tell
just
her
trying to see how many
much-
meetings it was gonna take, whether it's gonna take
Yeah.
4 meetings or 6,
Mhm.
you know? Right now, we have 1. If we keep education separate, we've gotta figure out where to put Recreation and Parks, and then we can do all the dates.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like the sheriff might not be available the same day as Dr. Hoy.
Yeah, well, I'm not explaining it very carefully. What I'm trying to do is see what we think in the time frame could be done. Like, we know we could do IT, HR, and Public Works all at one time. It may get fragmented, but then we could maybe interchange Public Works with Recreation
I
and
see.
Parks.
Okay.
Can't
So-
we just go with the 2 dates that she's already got? I mean, we don't have the dates picked out, but 2 different days and just fit them in.
Yeah, this is how we did it last year,
Right.
so
I
it's,
think, what I think we should do is, most of them could be a half hour, education probably an hour, maybe Public Works and Roads 45 minutes.
That's a
And
great
then
start.
and
yeah.
then throw it out to, like she said, Laura said, throw it out to the executive's office to figure out when those people are available and fit them in the time slots.
Okay, yeah, that's really where we should be going, is evaluating how much time it's gonna
How much
take.
time.
Yeah. So education's probably gonna be an hour and a half. IT,
We only did an hour last year.
That doesn't take a long time.
We gotta,
All right.
yeah, we
What
gotta figure
are
out.
we
Either way.
gonna say in an hour?
All right.
I already know what they want.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I think it ought to be 45 minutes, because the problem is not what they want. It's if you wanna give them something, you gotta find it somewhere else.
We'll probably get done with them in 45 minutes easily.
Yeah.
IT is probably about a half hour. HR is a half hour, if that's possible. and Public Works would be a half hour, is that right?
I think 45 minutes for Public
say
Works. You've
45
got
minutes.
two
I mean, if
departments.
you're covering roads, solid waste, and just the general public works, which
Yeah.
includes MS4,
Mhm.
I would give more time.
Who's got a lot of roads questions, John?
45 minutes.
Solid waste shouldn't be take much time, should it? It's
The library?
Half an hour.
State's Attorney, half hour? And Warwick would be a half hour. We're looking at half hours. Pretty much. Corrections and the sheriff. Half hour?
Each.
Or not? Half hour each?
Okay.
All right, so that pretty much tells us that,
Recreation and Parks,
Half hour.
half an hour.
Is that gonna be the civic center included in that?
that's probably at least.
And tourism.
You may want more time.
45 minutes?
That's
Civic
45.
Center, parks, and tourism. They're like public works, they got three big entities.
So in a sense, we could put, all right, where are we heading with this?
How many hours a day do we want to do?
Right.
That would be the other thing. Maybe
I don't like to do more than 2 hour in one session. I don't like to do more than 2 hours. Personally,
You mean with meeting with people?
yeah. If it goes over 2 hours, it just
And
gets.
then we can talk amongst ourselves otherwise.
Well, this said 15-minute interval.
No, I mean, I don't like to, I wouldn't like to combine them all so that we're doing more than a 2 hour stint total.
You mean just one day you only want 2 hours?
In one day, I wouldn't want to do more than 2 hours. It just gets,
Okay.
everything gets a little blurry after that. So it'd be about an hour and a half and then maybe a half hour discussion amongst ourselves.
What time's your bus ride over to it?
In the evening?
No, in the daytime.
9:00.
I bet in the evening.
I'd prefer first thing in the morning.
Well, Joe, one of the evening, though.
Well, you know,
got
that's
a lot
gonna
going on.
inconvenience the employees terribly. And I just have to work around it.
That's true.
I was thinking to myself, should do
It's not an inconvenience for Lynn and I.
Are Mondays and Tuesdays better for you, Joe?
Mondays and Tuesdays are ideal for me.
They're better for me too.
Well, this Monday at 9,
Yeah.
Tuesday at 9.
9 to 5 would be great Monday.
If we can knock them out in 2 days.
Could we focus on Mondays and Tuesdays starting at 9 a.m.? Or what time are you done, Ernie?
What time are you done, Ernie?
9:30.
Be here by 9:30.
9:30? Couldn't you just drive the bus right there in the parking lot?
I'm parking across the street
Somebody
there,
might take
but
a picture of it.
Looks like we're gonna need 4 sessions. Okay? 4
Okay.
sessions.
I'll pick you up at.
Focus on Mondays and Tuesdays and what other day?
That sounds good.
You guys are sure you want to do Mondays and Tuesdays?
Works
Yeah.
for everybody?
Mondays and Tuesdays are,
They work great, John.
have marathon sessions.
Just Mondays and Tuesdays? Anybody
Does
else?
that not work for you, John?
I'm looking because Mondays, they're right, it's right on here.
Doctor's appointment.
May 7th, I can't do on Monday morning, on May 7th, I can't do it. I've
Afternoons
seen,
good. Afternoons good work.
Thursdays always seem better for me. I don't know what you guys' schedules are first. Monday and Tuesday works for me on the 14th and the 15th. Oh, no, it doesn't, because I got a tri-county thing on the 14th. See, I can't do Monday at all, because I got something on the 7th and I got something on the 14th.
The 15th is a council meeting.
Um,
Come in at 9 o'clock before, or 9:30? Council meeting?
Nobody said we really needed you in
The
there.
14th? You're looking at,
15th is council meeting.
No, I'm talking about Monday, Monday, I can't do either of the next 2 Mondays, because I have appointments.
Okay, so what about Tuesday?
Tuesday, we do have the council meeting.
Yeah, I think,
15th.
What the,
Yeah, the 8th will be okay.
and then can we fit in a work session before the council meeting starts?
Oh, that makes for a long.
A 30-minute one?
Ernie can't be here till 9:30 anyway.
Okay.
All right, so we have
Well,
Tuesdays.
Let's do a night or two. I mean, if you want to do a night or two.
No, I mean, what you said earlier, get the department heads coming at night. I think if we can do it today and try to pull it off, instead of bringing it in at night.
It's here every night.
He loves it, sure. We got Tuesday the 8th, right? Everybody okay with that?
Okay.
I don't have my calendar. That's in sync to both. I walked out
But
the
John,
house and
you
looked
know,
on my chair.
I know you talked about 2 hours, but, you know, you're messing up a whole day for 2 hours, that's
That's what I was thinking.
my issue.
What are you saying you want to do? You want to do 3?
Let's do 3, let's do
We've
9:30
been
to
here tonight,
12:30.
we've been here tonight 3.5.
Well, last year when we did it, we started at 10 and we were done by 2.
All right, 3 hours. I mean, there's 7 people here, and I'm okay with that.
We got The 8th, you say, right now?
The 8th,
Not the 7th, the 8th.
the 8th. Okay, so the 8th is 1, 3 hour
3
session.
hours, okay.
Figure out what time?
9:30?
9:30? You want to start at 6:30?
In the morning?
Yeah.
Sorry. That was my thinking, Dallas.
Gentlemen, if you don't need the auditors, we're gonna have a meeting.
Thank you. Give me something productive.
Thanks. We're available whenever.
Except right now.
Except right now.
Yeah, right, yeah, let's do it.
Time,
All right,
9:30?
9:30 to 12:30, right?
If
Just
department heads
coincidentally,
are-
right in time for somebody's lunch. Okay, 9:30 to 12:30 on the 8th. Okay, what's next?
You said the 8th.
You can't do the 14th, 15th.
That was the 8th. That was the 8th.
Okay.
You can't do the 14th, 15th was council meeting.
You can't do the 14th, John?
No,
You have things on the
Can't.
14th?
I gotta do
15th.
something with Tri-County Council, got a 3-hour interview, I think, with the guy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're getting rid of that hard new guy.
Yeah.
Is that when it was rescheduled?
I think
Because
so.
we just canceled that yesterday.
I'm completely open Thursday the 10th.
Yeah. I got something at noon, but that's it.
21st and the 22nd.
I wish I had my other phone with me.
Yeah.
What about the week of the 14th, Tuesday? We got a
That's
council
session.
meeting at 10 a.m., yeah.
21st and the 22nd.
I'm wide open both days.
21st and 22nd?
Yeah.
3-hour sessions both days.
The 21st and 22nd?
Mhm.
I know next week I have doctor's appointments, but I can't tell you when. I don't have it on this one.
So we do 9:30 to noon, just block both those off on 21st and 22nd,
Yep,
or 9:30 to 12:30.
yep.
On Monday or Tuesday? More than likely, that'd be a better day for me, those two.
So 9:30 to 12:30. On the 21st, and 9:30 to 12:30 on the 22nd.
If needed.
Yeah.
We have to work around them.
Yeah.
Lisa.
Well, they, you know, at some point in time, you know, we got the sheriff, state's attorney, and board of ed, they're elected. You know, they have to come to see us if they don't want to come see us.
It's their budget.
Is that enough? Have we got enough here?
Yes.
1, 2, are there 4?
They don't want to come.
Are
You
there
have 3
4?
days, but you increase the hours, so I think that will take care of it.
Are you gonna send that tomorrow?
Yes.
So I can double check my calendar.
I'll send a list to Lisa and have her coordinate it.
I don't think it's gonna be a big deal.
Um,
Safe.
So right now we have 3 sessions, okay. All right, now, we're gonna have to do a wrap-up. Is the third one's on the 22nd, Tuesday the 22nd. We're gonna have to do a wrap-up.
That's the 1st of June, isn't it? When do we have to have this in, June 15th?
June 1st,
June 1st.
unless we do a resolution.
What about the
You know what?
29th?
I have the Tri-County on May 24th as well. I've got it in here twice. Do you have the date we're really supposed to be there? I know they canceled one of them.
We got the executive board meeting.
One of the dates.
Do what?
24th, not one of the dates.
That's all
It's
the-
in my other phone, it didn't sync to this.
Executive board meeting's on the 16th.
On the 16th at night at 6 o'clock,
Right, that's the executive board meeting, but this interview session,
But
see, I've got it at 9 o'clock on May 24th.
Okay, that's good.
But
It's
I
not
also
in one
had
of
it,
these.
I got a feeling maybe this one on May 14th isn't happening.
The one, we canceled the one that was Wednesday, last Wednesday, I think.
Okay,
The 14th.
close the vote session, so get out of here. It's 20 of it.
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I'd like to open up that day, but I really don't know. All right.
Yeah, we can schedule the wrap-up session later.
Okay.
We're gonna schedule that
Well,
right now.
maybe we, so the 14th on Monday is open for everyone here if we can do it, right? All right, so,
And then you'll just let me know tomorrow.
yeah, I'll try to see if I
Okay.
can, what I can do with that. And then the fourth one will be our wrap-ups, one of our wrap-up sessions.
Do we need
Okay.
to do a public hearing at night, Jim?
This was it.
Done.
I don't think so.
John, packed it all in. He was good, not wasting time.
Try to get out of it. It worked.
Okay, we're done with that, right?
Okay.
We're done?
That's it.
All right.
All right, good.
Shirt made for riveting TV.
Wow, yeah, no kidding. They're all sent.
Are they gonna be televised?
No,
Type 14?
I don't think that's way too much trouble. My God. Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn so we can go into closed work session.
So moved.
Second.
Wrap up.